Welcome to the Global Gaming Business Podcast, the industry's first and longest running podcast, now in our 15th year. This week, the podcast featured a discussion with Paul Gordon, the Senior Vice President of Sales for Rymax, on how the pandemic impacted his company and why it's important that casinos show their gratitude to their players and employees in its wake. The GGB podcast is brought to you by Vector Solutions, formerly Casino Essentials, the leading e-learning provider of AML compliance training for the gaming industry. For more information, visit casinoessentials.com. Paul Gordon, thanks for joining us on the podcast today. It's good to see you. Our first time using the Zoom platform for a podcast, and I appreciate you being our guinea pig here.
Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks for having us in there. And I see you've got your Ali picture in the background, so I've got my Ali gloves and pictures back there. Right. So there's some nice synergy here.
Yeah, absolutely, no question. So let's start with how Rymax was impacted by the pandemic. Obviously, when the casinos closed down, nobody was doing anything, but for a few months, and it was a tough time for everybody. But once the casinos opened, what was the reaction for Rymax to get back involved with them?
So it's interesting. First of all, we actually had a phenomenal first quarter. Before everything pretty much stopped in March. We really were having a very good first quarter across the board.
Right.
And for the 3 months, it was difficult for a number of reasons. One is because as much as you wanted to keep communication going with the casinos, it was difficult because so many people were furloughed.
Sure.
Or they were just let go. So it was a little bit of, well, who can you talk to? But we try to stay in contact as much as possible because at some point you have to, make sure the program is still going on, it's still robust. Loyalty is a funny thing. Loyalty is not really tangible, right? It's an emotion. And so, the programs, as you do them, you need to make sure that you're still, making the people feel like they're part of that family, because it's a very big part of what they do.
Sure.
So in those 3 months, we try to stay in contact. I will tell you that when it came back very strong. Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, we actually did some on-site shopping sprees at some of our core accounts on the properties.
Sure, right.
And it was almost like an alternate universe because as much as in the height of October, November, where people were really being told not to come in and all that, the casinos were very, very crowded. Yeah. I think they were very safe, though. They were taking the temperatures when the people were coming in. They were wearing the masks. They were wiping things down right away.
Right.
We had the event, and it went off without a hitch. So we rebounded. I mean, we obviously didn't have the same success that we had in 2019. But overall, what I was looking at in March was dismal, and what the actual results were, I was very, very happy with them.
Yeah, no question about that. So why is it more important than ever now to really recognize your loyal customers with incentives?
Well, so I think that especially in the casino world, with the 3 months where there were other options, right, to entertain yourself or to spend your money, people find different ways to do things that they like, and you got to bring them back. And so that's number one. I think the other thing is that, like I said before, is that, it's an emotion. And so the players feel like they're part of a family. They spend a lot of time there. It's a social place for them, as well as, an enjoyment in terms of what the gambling is. And so I think that you need to show them that. And I also think that during the time that they were closed, it's still a good time to realize and say, hey, you're important to us, and reach out to them. So I think loyalty has become even more important, not only in the casino business, but whether it's a product, whether it's a service, or whether it's an employee, because there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty. I mean, in everything that we're doing in our daily lives, not just with COVID, just in general. And so it's really been something that's been very, very strong. And I think that now for the casinos, it's vitally important.
Yeah, no question. So what has been the response? You mentioned the first few shopping sprees you had were very well attended. Is that held up through the months now that they've reopened?
Yeah. So what we did was on a couple of the properties, we convinced them to go all virtual, which worked out very well. Mm-hmm. And when I say all virtual, what I mean by that is that they had a viewable website.
Yeah.
They had a time to play to gather up a separate bucket of points if that's how they were going to run it, or if it was the year-long, points that were there. But they physically had to come in to make their choice. Right. So they weren't doing it remotely. So the casinos were getting that foot traffic. They were getting, what they need in terms of additional play. Mm-hmm. That worked out extremely well. For those where we did it on the property, we scaled down the number of SKUs that were on the floor. We changed the dynamic. Obviously, you can't try a watch on, you can't put sunglasses on your face, you can't do things like that. So there's a little bit of a difference there. But we try to make it as festive as possible and make it in a way that essentially was almost like a racetrack as they would come in. So it would be a circle, right, where the products are in the middle as well as in the perimeters, and having the people come in. The attendance was phenomenal. I would say that the impact of, let's say, some of the properties that had bordering states that weren't allowed in, or even Canada wasn't allowed in, you obviously saw, that there was a downside there. But the casinos were very happy, and I'm also happy to say that they're very quick to re-up for 2021.
Okay. So were you offering any products that were kind of related to the pandemic, things that you feel more comfortable with when you're staying at home?
Well, I always say in every program, one of the things that you have to really sort of understand is that redemptions are tied very much into what's going on from an economic standpoint, or just even from a psychological standpoint. So the things that are redeeming now are more practical than luxury. Certainly fitness is big, cookware is big, all of those things. And anything that sanitizes is big, right? So if you do a sanitized piece, that was a huge thing. And so you try to give them the choice because you really don't know what people want to redeem for. But in general, I would say that more practical things were redeeming, more functional than really frivolous or luxurious type things.
Right. Okay. So I just read that Rymax has added a lot of new products and companies to your already robust lineup. Give us an idea of what else you have to offer now. People know what you had initially, but what have you added to that inventory at this point?
So in a big way, we actually got into the home personal care segment. That's really exploded, and so we brought on brands like Ahava and Kiehl's and Taishao, which I'm not quite sure, quite frankly, what any of them do, but certainly our target audience does. And so we went much bigger into sort of the beauty healthcare area, which we really weren't in a big way. We definitely expanded the fitness. We brought Echelon on board. We brought Solo bikes on board. Echelon, I think is the one that's interactive, where you actually can work with a trainer and all. Because we saw what obviously happened with the health clubs, but also people in terms of wanting to be more fit. Outdoor, a lot of outdoor stuff. Brands like Green Egg, brands like Fire Sense, that are fire pits and all that. So we kind of moved into those areas that I think certainly resonated with what people are doing. And then what I said before is we actually brought on a product called Phone Soap, which is a phone sanitizing machine. And if you don't have one, Roger would have to send you one, because you'll sanitize everything that you touch. And that worked out really well for everybody. So it is. There are products that are related to what's going on right now. I think so. I mean, I think that anything that sanitizes, like I said, is good. I think at the same time, people spend a lot of time accumulating those comp dollars. And so you also want to make sure you give them something that's going to be functional even beyond this. I mean, there is light at the end of the tunnel. We hope there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that, maybe by the third or fourth quarter of this year, things will be somewhat back to normal. And so you want something that's still functional, because the value of the product in any loyalty program, rewards program, is the trophy value, the residual value, the long-term value. So you don't want to go too far down that area that's specific to COVID. You want to give them things that hopefully a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, they're still using, and they remind them of the casino.
Right. Too bad you can't give away vaccines, huh?
Oh my God, that'd be something. Somebody actually posted something the other day that with the government stumbling on the vaccines, they should give it to concert promoters, because not only would they get it out, they would sell T-shirts. They'd have a meet and greet with the Dr. Fauci or something like that. So,
meeting planners too,
they bang it out right away.
So let's talk about sports betting. It's obviously been the big thing in the industry for the past couple of years. And, casinos that are related to the sports books, the Caesars sports books and the Golden Nugget sports books and things of that nature, they already have a loyalty program that they build into, their incentives. But there's a lot of standalone companies involved in this area, the DraftKings, the FanDuels, PointsBets of the world, that don't necessarily have a loyalty program. Is that starting to develop, or can you see incentives working for those kind of companies?
Yeah, I think that they have to have incentives to go to those companies for a couple of reasons. Number one, what's staggering, I know because I think your publication reported it. New Jersey did $1 billion in December. I mean, that blows your mind. It did $1 billion. And, it's not something that's going to stop when the pandemic is over. They've initiated trial and people like it. They like the ease of it. They like the way that they're able to sit down and suddenly bet on if the guy's going to make the field goal or not, or who's going to win the fight. So it's here to stay. I think that all of the emerging people, though, are doing what any new emerging business is, which is their call to action is twofold right now, right? Essentially, it's a certain level of free play, right? They're going to try to get you in on your first bet being free, whatever it is, right? Old casino trick. And the other one is that a lot of their loyalty or product giveaways are branded to get the name out.
Sure, right.
But there are only so many DraftKings t-shirts or hats that you need, right? Right. And so you need to start to differentiate what the program is, because what I keep on preaching into this segment is that where a casino has other things that draw you in, the environment, the people you interact with, this is a solitary practice, right? Because you're online.
Yep.
And if the point spread is 3.5, it's 3.5 anywhere.
Right.
So what's going to make you go specifically to that? And that's where the loyalty program becomes important. And I think it becomes important in terms of having products that are tied into it, just like the casinos do, or just like United Airlines does, or any other loyalty program. And so, I'm trying to make a big push on that right now to get those, operators to see that. But it's like anything else; it's really in its infancy. And so, right now, I think that what they're doing is probably pretty smart because they want to initiate trial. But I think to create loyalty, they really should have a loyalty program that has more than just the branded stuff or more than just the equivalent of a free play.
Sure. So how could a sportsbook reward players that might be different from the way the casino does, outside of the free plays and things of that nature?
Well, I think that, gambling is all about frequency. Right. No matter whether it's a property or not, it's frequency, right? So how do you drive frequency? You drive frequency by essentially doing continuity and doing play ups and trying to get them to increase their bets. And so the business model of offering A for doing something and then to go into B and then to C, which has been used forever in the casino world, can be applied to the online betting. So, how do you create that? And it's a very sort of simple, process, which I think will be very, very effective. So I think they need to certainly look at that. I think that they have to also look at, they have a great advantage over the casinos, in my opinion, that the bets revolve around very, very specific things. Right. The Super Bowl, the NCAA Final Four, a big UFC fight. And so you can actually tailor the product reward to something that is within, that environment that's there. And they can do it very, very quickly and do it very, very efficiently. So I think they can be a lot more creative because a lot of the casinos and, so you do it, it's almost a buckshot approach. Sure. Here's the giveaway. It's going to be X, right? Yeah. And it's going to be during this time of year. But with the sports book, they could really do something that is very, very specific to what's going on. And I think they could have a lot of fun with it. And again, that would differentiate DraftKings from somebody else, and it becomes a different offering. In my experience with the casinos, when we do like a shopping spree, it always amazes me that I'll see the same people, the same person that will show up in Atlantic City, in Pennsylvania, and New York.
Yeah.
They spread it around. And I think a sports bettor will also spread it around too, to a certain extent. And so that's why I think the loyalty program makes a lot of sense.
Right.
The GGB podcast is brought to you by Vector Solutions, formerly Casino Essentials, the leading e-learning provider of AML compliance training for the gaming industry. Find out how your casino can enhance your personnel's performance, ensure compliance, and protect resources. For more information, visit casinoessentials.com.
So, you mentioned earlier that, when the casinos want people to come into their properties to redeem their incentives, but obviously that is impossible with sports betting. So what would how would you get them to redeem it? Would you have to set it at a higher level? Because I guess you get more redemption, on a virtual basis than you would if you're actually have to make an effort to go to a location.
Yeah, well, good points. I mean, first of all, the economics always rely back to the customer, right? Right. What are they willing to invest in that individual, and then what is that spend going to be? The dropship model is actually is the model that is used for the majority of the loyalty programs that we do, where it actually goes to the consumer's house as opposed to going in there. So that model's set and ready to take place, where they wouldn't physically go into a DraftKings building. That's not what the model is, right? So that's in place and that can work. And in terms of what the cost is per acquisition, or in terms of what they're trying to do in terms of lifting play, that really becomes a mathematical equation with them. The way that we operate with our clients is they tell us they're willing to spend X per player, and we're going to give them ideas of what they can do within X.
Right.
That's how you build a program.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So you mentioned that they can really tailor their rewards to these specific events, the Super Bowl, the Final Four. Obviously, you can have apparel and things like that, and I guess gear of the teams that are in there. So they'd have to react pretty quickly to be able to get that out to their customers.
Yep. And we do that. I mean, we do that. I'm not a big, huge fan of wearables. I like to give something that has a higher perceived value. And so, even if it's the NCAA, does it make sense to have some type of smart device as your giveaway? Is it a great set of headphones? Is it something that really, resonates sort of with who that player is? And Roger, I think I've told you this probably 1,000 times whenever you've been nice enough to interview me, is that, my marketing strategy is always segmentation and concentration. Segment the audience, concentrate on what they like, and build a program around that. And so I think when, in our case, we have over 400 brands and I think 15,000 SKUs. There's a lot of stuff that can be offered up. It's just a question of, what's right for that individual. And that's where also the choice, I think, comes in. I think that, as opposed to saying you're specifically going to get X, give them a choice.
Yeah, sure.
One of these 10 things when you do this.
Right. So Rymax, you deal with some of the largest casinos in the country and some of the smaller tribal and regional casinos. So how do you help your clients to decide what level of players are eligible for what kind of incentives?
Well, again, great question. Vegas is a different animal. It's a destination. It's not really a locals market, although with, what is there now, 3-4 million people that live out there, whatever that number is, more and more it becomes a locals market. And if you're down on Fremont Street, certainly there's a different sort of model there. But it is different. The majority of the casinos really are regional, and it's what's the draw within, let's say, a 30, 45, or 60-mile radius. And so we work really very, very closely with them in terms of who is their player and what are they drawing from. And then also, what is the competition? You have some markets where it's the only game in town.
Right.
So that's a different strategy than somebody that turns around and says, well, right down this street here, you got 3 or 4 different choices, or within, a 10-mile radius, different choices. Everybody wants things that that are brand driven, right? Or that have, brand equity.
Right.
The other thing is that people oftentimes like to get things that they don't want to buy. Listen, there's a Dyson hairdryer that we carry. That's a $300 hairdryer. Now, that's a lot of money for a hairdryer. Sure. Would you want it? Yeah, everybody wants it. Do you really want to buy it? Maybe not. That's why it's a great product to be in a loyalty program, or even conventional things, whether it's vacuums or cookware. So when we talk to our clients, we look at a couple of different models. One is that, is there a lot of competition in that market, or are you sort of a standalone? How much of it is truly a local market? How much is driven by, seasonality? Atlantic City's a seasonal town. They may not want to see it that way, but it's a big difference in June than there is in February on the boardwalk, right? And then we try to put together a program that really makes the most sense to try to drive that business. We do a lot of theme-based, giveaways or on-site experiences, because again, you got so many different categories. You can do literally something every month and not repeat it.
Sure. Another category that you guys are in is incentivizing for employees. And obviously, in this day and age when employees are getting furloughed and but you don't want to lose those valuable employees. How have you been working with some of your clients to allow your clients to use these incentives for their employees to maintain that loyalty even when they might be furloughed?
So a couple of things. One is that we view a loyalty or recognition program, recognition program for employees as a phenomenal HR tool.
Right.
Because when you're hiring, when you have a program like that, where there's peer-to-peer recognition, where there's just recognition, spot recognition or whoever the program is, that becomes really, really important for bringing people in. We're going to have an economy that I think is going to have some of the best talent all vying for the same jobs.
Right.
I mean, the casino industry, I mean, look at the layoffs.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, Roger, some of the executives that we know very well, that we've known for years, that don't have a job right now.
Right.
These are really good people.
Mhm.
And these are people that are going to land someplace, hopefully soon, and they're going to be back into this business. And so I think that the employee recognition program, from the executives down to an entry level employee, is critical for the organization.
Yeah.
I think that to get people to understand what the new protocols are, there's a reason for training, and that's an employee program. And I think that also, in terms of starting to upsell some of the services that have been closed down for quite some time, you know, what are you going to do to incentivize the front desk? What are you going to do to incentivize, you know, the cocktail waitress to, you know, to talk about those things? Because those ancillary businesses, you know, drive more revenue at this stage of the game than a lot of the play. You know, it could be 60, 70% of the revenue is in ancillary services.
Right.
And so the employee programs are real important. And, you know, the only one that today isn't as strong as it was, let's say, 10 years ago, is years of service. And that's not because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's because of the transient nature of employees. They move around.
Right.
But peer-to-peer recognition and training recognition and spot recognition, very, very important. And I think that, you know, whether it's, I don't know if the Palazzo is still closed. I know that, you know, the Venetian part was open.
Right, sure.
When those employees come back, there's a whole re-education process of what the standard is and what is to be expected. And you need a program for that.
Sure. And when you can reward them for just being loyal and hanging on, then when they come back, they're going to, you know, repay that in spades, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, everybody wants to be recognized. Everybody wants to be appreciated. And I think now more than ever, you know, I mean, everybody wants that, right? I mean, it's a scary time.
Right. Yeah, well, just one more question, and that has to do with these challenging times. You know, the casinos are still operating at 25 or 50% occupancy, and they want to get the best players in there. So what kind of advice is Rymax giving your clients when it comes to, you know, developing these incentive programs to really attract the top players that they want to remain connected to?
So I think, and you know, you can tell me if I'm wrong, Roger, I think that the top tier players are pretty loyal because, you know, that's the property. They like to play there and all that. It's the middle that I'm most concerned about.
Right.
And it's also the new, right? And we've talked about I think for the last 10 years, you and I have had multiple conversations about millennials and all that. And, you know, when are they going to go in there? Well, they don't have any money, so they don't go in there, but at some time they morph into their parents.
Sure.
You know, I think the progressive commercials are great when they talk about, you know, not being your parents, right? So I think that a couple of things that need to really be stressed to sort of the mass audience, that middle tier player. One is the safety component. There's still a lot of fear. And I talked to neighbors and all that. They say, you went to the casino? I mean, weren't you concerned? Well, I'm not concerned when I walk in and the temperature is being taken. I'm not concerned when everybody's wearing a mask. I'm not all that concerned when you know, they've got employees that are wiping everything down constantly, from the escalator handles to the machines. You know, I'm not concerned when I check into my room and there's a piece of tape that goes across there that says this room has been cleaned and no one has entered it since then. I mean, there's just a lot of really good things. So I think that, you know, that's the first hurdle that sort of needs to be overcome.
Right.
I think that, you know, once the restaurants can open, when I was in Atlantic City, you know, we did a couple of events at some of the properties down there, and at 10 o'clock, everything has to shut down in New Jersey. You know, so well, where do they go? And so I think that making sure that everybody knows that things are sort of back up and running and it's operational, I think that's really going to be very, very important. And then in my world, it's a matter of drawing them in against, you know, some type of promotion. And, you know, whether it's a $20 item or whether it's a more expensive item, whatever they decide to do to get them in. So people experience it and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm comfortable again. I can come back in there again. And I think that that's how they're going to weather. Again, you know, hopefully when you and I see each other, maybe at G2E, if it happens in September, right? We hope that happens. It'll almost be a normal world again. But right now, I think that there's a lot of communication that needs to be done, and there needs to be some promotions to drive the people back in again.
No question. Well, Paul, I think you guys have been doing a great job during this difficult time, and I think the more casinos depend upon your advice and your knowledge of the business certainly is second to none. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and like you say, hope we get to see you in person at G2E. I certainly plan to be there, whether it's going to be held or not.
Me too. Well, listen, I always appreciate you giving us a voice to the casino industry. We think it's vitally important, and there are a lot of jobs that are at stake, and there are a lot of livelihoods, and we're in it with them to make sure that they're successful.
Great. Well, good to talk to you, and we'll touch base again soon.
Great. Thanks, Roger.
We hope you enjoyed this week's podcast, brought to you by Vector Solutions, formerly Casino Essentials, the leading e-learning provider of AML compliance training for the gaming industry. Find out how your casino can enhance your personnel's performance, ensure compliance, and protect resources. For more information, visit casinoessentials.com. To find out more about player loyalty, visit ggbmagazine.com. And to get all the news of the casino industry, particularly of the coronavirus pandemic and its impact on gaming, including daily updates, subscribe for free at ggbnews.com by using the code GGB180. Don't miss a single episode of the GGB podcast. Subscribe on iTunes and Spotify today. So we'll see you next time on the GGB podcast.